Hello, our dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of our program Africa Today. In today's edition, we are going to talk about the visit by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to Sudan. President al-Sisi arrived back home after a one-day official visit to the Sudanese capital, Khartoum, on Saturday. During the visit, President al-Sisi held talks with the head of the Sudanese Transitional Sovereign Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and Sudanese Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok. During the visit to Sudan, President al-Sisi said that the policy of imposing a fait accompli and extending control over the Blue Nile through the unilateral measures without taking Sudan's and Egypt's interests into account is rejected. It was his first visit to Sudan since the overthrow of Omar al-Bashir nearly 2 years ago. More details in the following story.
El-Sisi made his first visit to neighboring Sudan since the ouster of longtime autocrat Omar al-Bashir and met head of state General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan on Saturday. During the visit, El-Sisi warned against Ethiopia continuing to fill its Nile Dam. Khartoum and Cairo and Addis Ababa have been locked for almost a decade in inconclusive talks over the filling and operation of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam GERD on the Blue Nile, which broke ground in 2011. Cairo sees the structure a threat to Egypt's water supply, while Khartoum fears its own dams will be harmed if Addis Ababa proceeds with filling the GERD before a deal is reached. Addis Ababa said its year filling target last year has declared plans to go ahead with the second phase of filling, regardless of whether an agreement is in place. Standing alongside Sudan's al-Burhan, El-Sisi said, Cairo and Khartoum have agreed to relaunch negotiations with quadripartite mediation that includes the African Union, the United Nations, the European Union, and the United States to reach a deal before the flood season. El-Sisi's talks with Burhan and separately with Sudanese Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok also addressed maritime security in the Red Sea and the Sudan-Ethiopia border tensions. In a statement released after the meetings, the Egyptian side hinted at Cairo's support for Khartoum in its border dispute with Addis Ababa. Spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi said recent Sudanese moves to assert sovereignty over its eastern borders with Ethiopia are in line with Sudan's respect for international border agreements. Tensions have been running high over the Al Fashaqa border region, where Ethiopian farmers cultivate fertile land claimed by Sudan. The two countries have been trading accusations of violence in the area and territorial violations. This week, top Egyptian and Sudanese army officials signed a deal on military cooperation between the two countries, while Sudan's Foreign Minister Mariam al-Mahdi also discussed the GERD in Cairo with el-Sisi and other Egyptian officials.
Well, to shed more light on the visit by President al-Sisi to Sudan, we are joined over the phone by Mr. Raouf Ghaffar, our political expert. Mr. Ghaffar, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, my dear.
Mr. Ghaffar, how would you describe the level of recent ties between Cairo and Khartoum?
Well, Cairo and Khartoum have always been very close, of course, over the long years, despite some ups and downs, but
Yes.
in general, excellent relations. But particularly lately, things are getting closer and closer.
Yeah.
And the visit of our president yesterday to Khartoum, I think it will mark a new era in the relation between the two countries. And when I'm talking relations, I mean in everything.
Yeah.
We're talking security, we're talking military, we're talking politically, we're talking economic. I mean, you name it. We are fully integrating with Sudan, and I think this was made very clear by our president that we are backing them all the way for security, for stability, for development. So I mean, we are as of yesterday. I think we are now. We can say that we are one.
Yes, indeed.
So this is as far as the bilateral relations concerned, of course, between Egypt and Sudan particularly. And of course, on the major other issues and crises that are surrounding us. Again, the point of view of the two countries is identical, and they are moving ahead as planned.
Yes, Mr. Ghaffar, how do you weigh actually the timing of the visit by President Sisi to Sudan?
Perfect timing. I mean, very well studied. We have seen some, of course, preparations to this visit over the last few days. The minister, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, was here, and our Defense Minister was there. I mean, but the timing has been very sort of accurate because of the challenges that are facing us, and they are now, time is running up, and we have to work as one solid, united front in front of all the challenges, particularly as far as the two main issues having to do with the frontier turmoil that is now taking place between Ethiopia and Sudan.
Yes.
And of course, the notorious Renaissance Dam and the very stubborn attitude that Ethiopia is taking, which is totally unacceptable.
Yes.
And they are trying to force a status quo situation which is categorically unacceptable.
Yes.
And that is why we have been very clear on that.
Yes.
First of all, involving the world community, represented by European Union, United States, United Nations, African Union, in working out a solution for this problem, leading to signing a binding agreement with Ethiopia in order to safeguard the interest of everybody concerned.
Yes, indeed. Mr. Ghaffar, at the joint press conference yesterday in Khartoum, President Sisi said that Cairo is keen actually to strengthen cooperation with Khartoum in all domains, particularly in this transitional period. Sir, how important is the cooperation for the two sides at the moment?
I mean, nature has given us a blessing, which we are complementing each other. Egypt is full of human resources. Sudan is full of natural resources.
Yes.
And if we join the two together, I think we can achieve a lot. And this is exactly what I meant by complementing each other, by integration, using the resources available in each country. And I think that this will result into excellent achievements, as you rightly said, on all levels. I'm not talking military, I'm not talking security stability, because these are elementary, but I'm talking really big size development. We're talking agriculture, we're talking industry, we're talking financing Egyptian companies making investments in Sudan. I mean, we are talking globally in every single aspect and in every single domain. And I think we have the means and the capacity to achieve and all what we aspire to as far as the two nations are concerned.
Yes, indeed. Sir, also President Sisi said that electronic linking as well as the transportation projects are very important. How would these projects benefit both sides, Egyptian and Sudanese?
Well, I mean, meetings will go on, whether are physical meetings or not.
Yes.
But again, there will be a very sort of follow up on every single matter that was discussed, and I'm sure that a lot of committees will be formed, and the work will be followed up very thoroughly and very closely, and I'm sure that all the inconveniences that we are facing due to the difficulties of moving and of meeting and what have you. Hopefully we'll get rid of it soon, and then we'll go back to normal, and we will be all the time seeing each other, talking to each other, sitting with each other, working out everything that is good for the two countries.
Yes, sir. Also, President Sisi said that they agreed on the need to resume negotiations so as to reach a legally binding agreement on the mechanism of filling and operating the Ethiopian dam. What are your expectations for Ethiopia's response to that?
And this is my personal opinion.
Indeed, yes.
I think that Ethiopia has loads of internal problems.
Yes.
Whether tribal or ethnic or what have you, but I think that the stalling and the attitude they are taking towards this Renaissance dam is simply something to divert the Ethiopians from the real issues that they have internally. But again, stubbornness, completely unexplained and unacceptable. And I am sure that one way or the other, they will be brought to the senses, whether amicably or not. They will concede and they will accept what is rightfully ours, but the right in what is concerned. They will eventually sign the binding agreement that will safeguard against the interests of all concerned.
Yes, finally, Mr. Gafar, Al-Burhan welcomed President Sisi and the Egyptian government and people for their supportive stance towards Sudan in this critical period. How do you see this gesture by Al-Burhan, and how do you see the pivotal role that Egypt is playing with Sudan as well as the African brothers as well?
Well, Egypt was always there for Sudan. I mean, when there's a crisis in Sudan, the first country that comes to the help is Egypt. We have seen this in different aspects. I mean, when they needed help,
yes,
as COVID-19 was concerned, we were the first one to supply them with whatever they needed. When they had problems in the different provinces, we were there to help work out the things.
Yes.
When they had some misunderstandings with the south of Sudan, we were there to work out an agreement that was agreeable to both sides. I mean, Egypt was always, as usual, in the back of Sudan.
Yes.
We have said that, and not only said, but we are really made it happen. And the Sudanese brothers and sisters, they understand this,
yes,
and they are happy with it. And they are looking forward to enhancement of
yes,
their relations with Egypt at all levels and all aspects.
Yes, and finally, Mr. Gafar, are we saying here that Egypt's legacy in Africa is somehow back, Egypt's pivotal role in Africa is back to the situation as it was in the 50s and in that era?
Absolutely. This is normal. I mean,
yes,
Egypt is one of 2 or 3 largest and biggest countries in the continent.
Yes.
We have a strategic location linking the continent to 2 different continents.
Yes.
We are in the middle of the Middle East, and so in any event, and this is not a role. In my opinion, this is responsibility. This is an eternal responsibility that Egypt has, first of all, toward our brothers and sisters in Sudan, second, our brothers and sisters in the whole continent of Africa.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Raouf Gafar, our political analyst and expert. Always a pleasure to listen to your precious input. Many thanks, sir, and have a very good evening. And our dear viewer, to Somalia, the death toll has risen to at least 20 after a vehicle packed with explosive rammed into the popular restaurant in the Somali capital, Mogadishu, with 30 people wounded. More in the following story.
At least 20 people were killed when an explosive packed car detonated at a restaurant in the Somalian capital of Mogadishu on Friday. Authorities fear the death toll could rise as emergency crews continued to pull out people trapped in the rubble. Police suspect a suicide bomber blew up a car outside a popular restaurant in the capital city. Over 30 others were wounded in the blast. The explosion occurred at dinner time when the restaurant was full. The blast reportedly could be heard across the city. In addition to the restaurant, several nearby buildings were also damaged and at least one collapsed after the bombing. This is the second time the Lul Yemeni restaurant, which is popular with city workers, government employees, and security personnel, has been attacked. Security in Mogadishu had been especially heavy, with thousands of government forces deployed in anticipation of a planned demonstration on Saturday by an alliance of opposition leaders over the country's delayed national election. Following the deadly violence, the demonstrations were postponed.
In Libya, the names of the members of interim Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dibeiba, a proposed government, will be voted on by the House of Representatives on Monday in the central coastal city of Sirte, halfway between the two administrations in the east and the west. More details follow.
Libya's interim Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dibeiba on Thursday submitted his proposed government for approval by Parliament. His office reported the move a key step towards unifying the war-ravaged nation. Dibeiba was himself selected as interim premier on February 5 in a UN-sponsored inter-Libyan dialogue, the latest internationally backed bid to salvage the country from a grinding civil war and fragmented political fiefdoms. Libya last month commemorated 10 years since the start of the 2011 NATO-backed uprising that toppled longtime dictator Muammar Gaddafi, plunging the country into a decade of violence. The oil-rich North African nation has been split between two rival administrations. Names in Dibeiba's proposed government were not made public, but the House of Representatives is slated to vote on the list on Monday in the central coastal city of Sirte, halfway between the two administrations in the east and west. Under the UN plan, the premier has until March 19 to win approval for a cabinet before tackling the giant task of unifying Libya's proliferation institutions and leading the transition up to December 24 polls.
Well, with that, our dear viewers, we come to the end of our program Africa Today for today. And we were tackling the visit by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to Khartoum. Hope you have enjoyed it. Until tomorrow is another cruise. Goodbye.